Well, Rosemary, obviously this is an extraordinary situation here. Indeed, this may become the press conference of the Iraq War that everyone will remember. Now, President Bush arrived in the country late this afternoon local time on a surprise visit. Now, he was actually here on essentially a farewell tour. It's his fourth visit to the country, and it's the first time he's actually left the bubble of a US military base. Now, during a press conference with the Iraqi Prime Minister, we've seen the scenes, and we keep seeing them, and we're gonna keep seeing them. This is where an Iraqi television correspondent for an Iraqi network stood up and threw first one and then a second shoe at President Bush, nearly missing his head in one case, if not for the reflexes of the president himself. Now, President Bush, once order was restored and the journalist was dragged out screaming by the Secret Service and others, attempted to turn the moment to his advantage and saying that this was actually an expression of something positive. This is what the president said.
So what if the guy threw a shoe at me? Oh, I consider it an important step on the road toward an Iraq that can sustain itself, govern itself, and defend itself. But let me talk about the guy throwing the shoe. It is one way to gain attention. It's like going to a political rally and having people yell at you. It's like driving down the street and have people not gesturing with all five fingers.
And whilst that may be true in many environments, what President Bush said, in Iraq it has a very different resonance, far more than just driving down the street. In this culture, throwing a shoe at someone is all but the ultimate insult. And generally, it's reserved only for the most hated. And we saw that in the days after the invasion when the Saddam statue was pulled down and the Iraqis hopped on and started slapping the statue with their shoes. And indeed, just a few weeks ago, in a massive demonstration against America here in Baghdad, we saw Iraqis throwing their shoes at what? An effigy of President Bush himself, perhaps prophetic, Rosemary.
Indeed. I mean, it begs the question, what's likely to happen to this guy?
Well, we're all wondering that right now. I mean, you would imagine that he's under detention. The question is it American Secret Service detention? Is he handed off to the US military? Or is, he given to Iraqi custody? That, of course, entails a whole host of different things, some of which we would not like to contemplate. We really don't know what's happened. There's no statement that's been made. Either way, I wouldn't imagine at this stage it would be pleasant for that Iraqi journalist, Rosemary.
Indeed. And Michael, this was supposed to be somewhat of a victory lap for President George W. Bush. What could this trip end up being for him?
Well, I mean, I guess people will take whatever meaning they see in this and move on with that. I mean, one of the most obvious ones is that this was, as you said, his victory lap. He was here to celebrate these agreements that now govern the ongoing presence of America and effectively end the US phase of the Iraq War. This is the beginning of the American end in many ways, because these agreements say America's got to be out of here in 3 years, no discussions, no negotiation, no questions. So it also wraps the US military up into legal knots where the Iraqis are now running the show here and the Americans are just supporting. So in many ways, a large chunk of the war, America has lost its capability to wage that war. Now, with President Bush here and this incident, people may regard that as some kind of a symbolic representation of the legacy of the Bush administration here in Iraq. The administration that started this war is the administration that signed the agreement that ended it in terms that are less than what many American diplomats and others would have liked to have seen after so many deaths and the expenditure of so much treasure.